okay, then pulled that envelope. Was this planned the whole time?
To my son, the one who truly earned it. That was the first sentence. Not children, not both of you, not even my name. Just him. The room erupted in applause before the words even settled. Glasses clinked, someone whistled. My father, Daniel Vase, stood tall at the center of it all, chin lifted, smile wide, pride radiating like this was the moment he'd been waiting for his entire life. And maybe it was, just not for me. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I stood 3 feet to his right, holding a glass I hadn't touched. You ever feel invisible in a room where everyone can clearly see you, where your presence is acknowledged but never felt? Yeah. My name is Treasure Vase. I'm 22 years old, and tonight I graduated top of my class. So did my brother. Same stage, same honors, same applause, at least that's how it looked from the outside. But let me ask you something. If 2 people cross the same finish line, why does only one of them get celebrated? Why does only one of them get chosen? Because that's what this was. Not a celebration, a decision. The venue was too nice for a family gathering. Crystal chandeliers, catered tables, a string quartet playing just loud enough to make everything feel expensive. My mother, Elaine, had coordinated every detail herself. She moved through the crowd gracefully, greeting guests, adjusting decorations, never once looking in my direction for more than a second. But every time Marcus laughed, she turned instantly. Marcus Vase, 24, finance major, golden child. He stood near the center of the room, literally surrounded by relatives, family, friends, people I barely recognized but who somehow knew him. They were shaking his hand, patting his back, calling him the future, the one to watch, just like your father. No one said those things to me. What I got instead were softer smiles, polite nods. Congratulations, Treasure. Quick, efficient, forgettable. And the weird part? I wasn't surprised. That's what should bother you. Because I knew. Somewhere deep down, I already knew how this night was going to go. My father raised his glass higher, pulling the room's attention back to him. Marcus worked through real challenges, he continued, his voice steady, deliberate. He pushed himself. He earned this. There it was again. Earned. The implication hung in the air like something no one wanted to say out loud. So what did that make me? Lucky? Less? Or just irrelevant? I finally took a sip from my glass, mostly to give my hands something to do. The champagne tasted flat. Then came the line that shifted everything. And to support his future, my father said, glancing proudly at Marcus, we've decided to clear all of his student debt. The room exploded. Applause. Cheers. Someone actually stood up. And me? I didn't move. Because in that moment, my brain did something strange. It started calculating. Marcus's debt, around $120,000. Mine? Just under $95,000. Close enough to matter. Far enough to be ignored. You'd think you'd assume that if parents could do that for one child, they'd at least acknowledge the other. Right? Wrong. Because no one said my name. Not once. A woman near the back, one of my mom's friends, laughed lightly and asked, "Oh, and what about Treasure?" It was casual, harmless, but it cracked something open. My mother answered before my father could. "She'll manage," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She's always been independent." Independent? That word sounds like a compliment, doesn't it? Until you realize what it really means. You're on your own. A man beside her chuckled. Smart investment, then. More laughter. And then, quiet. Low. Almost like it wasn't meant to be heard. But I heard it. "We can't carry everyone," my father muttered. "Some people are just a burden." Burden. The word didn't echo. It settled. Right in the center of my chest. And here's the part that gets people. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even look surprised. I just nodded once and said, "Okay. That's it. Just, okay." And then I reached into my bag, slowly, deliberately, because here's what no one in that room knew. This moment, it didn't catch me off guard. I'd been waiting for it, preparing for it. And what I pulled out next, was never meant to stay hidden. This didn't start at graduation, it started years ago. Let me take you back. Because nights like that, they don't just happen. They're built. Slowly. Quietly. Over years of small decisions no one questions at the time. Growing up, there were two versions of success in our house. Marcus and everyone else. And I learned that difference early. Not through anything obvious. Not at first. No one sat me down and said, "You matter less." It was subtler than that, cleaner, harder to argue with. Marcus got attention. I got expectations. Same house, same parents, completely different roles. He was the future. I was the reliable one. Sounds harmless, right? It's not, because when you're labeled reliable, people stop checking if you're okay. I remember one specific afternoon, I must have been 14. I just won a regional science competition. First place, months of work, late nights, sacrifices no one really saw. I came home holding that trophy like it actually meant something. My mom glanced at it from the kitchen. "That's nice, treasure. Dinner's in an hour." That was it. No hug, no questions, no celebration. Meanwhile, Marcus walked in 2 hours later complaining about a B-, and my dad spent the entire evening reassuring him that he was capable of more. Do you see it? One achievement, one expectation. Only one of them mattered. And it didn't stop there. When Marcus struggled in school, my parents hired private tutors, expensive ones, specialists, people who didn't just teach, they strategized. When I struggled, I adjusted. Because that's what I was good at. Adapting, fixing, handling things alone. By the time we got to college, the gap wasn't just emotional anymore. It was financial. Marcus changed majors twice, took extra semesters, joined organizations that required fees my parents paid without hesitation. Investment, my father called it. I got scholarships, grants, worked part-time in labs, not because I had to, but because it made things easier for them. And here's the part that took me a while to understand. The less I needed, the less they offered. Independence didn't earn support. It replaced it. I tested it once, just once. I was 19, sitting at the kitchen table, going over tuition projections for the next year. I wasn't even asking for money, not really. Just acknowledgement. "Hey," I said carefully, "if something changed, like if I needed help, would you help me?" My mom didn't even look up from her tablet. "You won't need it," she said. "You're strong." Strong. Another word that sounds good. Until you realize it comes with conditions. Don't break. Don't ask. Don't expect. I nodded like that made sense. But something shifted in me that day. Because I started paying attention, not emotionally, logically. I noticed the numbers, the differences, the quiet patterns no one talks about because they're not dramatic enough to call out. Money spent on Marcus versus me. Time invested. Energy. Excuses made for him. Expectations placed on me. And no, I didn't get angry. Not right away. I got precise, observant, because once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. By the time graduation approached, everything was already mapped out in my head. Not just what they would do, but what they wouldn't do. And that's the part most people miss. Disappointment only hurts when it's unexpected. But when you see it coming, it becomes something else. Preparation. So when my father stood there that night, praising Marcus, choosing Marcus, erasing me without ever saying the words directly, I didn't feel shock. I felt confirmation. Because I already knew. And more importantly, I had already made a decision long before that toast ever happened. A decision that had nothing to do with proving them wrong. And everything to do with making sure I would never need them to choose me again. But what they didn't know, what no one in that room could have guessed, was that while they were busy investing in Marcus's future, I had been building something of my own, quietly, carefully, and completely outside their control. So I stopped asking and started planning. That's the shift no one saw, because from the outside, nothing about me changed. Same grades, same calm attitude, same independent daughter who never caused problems, never made demands, never needed saving. But internally, everything recalibrated. I stopped measuring my life by their reactions and started measuring it by outcomes. Let me ask you something. What happens when someone realizes they've been playing the wrong game the entire time? They stop trying to win it, and they build their own. That's exactly what I did. It started small. Extra hours in the lab, not because I had to, but because access meant opportunity. I volunteered for research projects no one else wanted, the tedious ones, the ones with no immediate payoff. Because I wasn't chasing recognition anymore. I was building leverage. Professors started noticing. Not in the loud, congratulatory way my parents celebrated Marcus, but in quieter, more valuable ways. Recommendations. Introductions. Access to rooms Marcus didn't even know existed, and I didn't tell my family any of it. Not when I got invited to assist on a private biotech study. Not when one of my professors pulled me aside and said, "You're operating at a level most students don't reach until years into their careers." Not even when that same professor connected me to a startup accelerator program that only accepted 5 candidates nationwide. Why? Because I already knew how that conversation would go. They'd nod, smile politely, and then ask about Marcus. So I kept everything quiet. Meanwhile, Marcus's life looked impressive on the surface. Internships, networking events, expensive suits, the kind of lifestyle that photographs well. But underneath, things weren't as stable as everyone thought. He spent more than he earned, took risks he didn't fully understand, relied on the assumption that someone our parents would always step in if things got too complicated. And they did. Every time. I found out about the second mortgage by accident. A document left open on the home office desk during one of my visits. I wasn't snooping. I didn't need to. The numbers were right there. Large enough to make your chest tighten if you understood what they meant. They hadn't just supported Marcus. They had leveraged their future for him. And that's when everything became crystal clear. There wasn't a safety net. There was a priority list, and I wasn't on top of it. So I made a decision that day. Not emotional. Not reactive. Strategic. I stopped waiting for fairness and started engineering independence. A few weeks later, I got the email. Subject line: offer of acceptance confidential. The biotech accelerator. Full access to funding channels. Legal advisory. Debt restructuring options. And most importantly, equity. Real equity. Not theoretical success. Ownership. That's when things stopped being hypothetical. Because now there was something real at stake. If I succeeded, I wouldn't just be equal, I'd be operating on an entirely different level. But if I failed, there'd be no fallback, no parental bailout, no second chances funded by someone else's sacrifices. I'd be exactly what they already believed I was, a burden who couldn't carry herself. So I said yes, signed everything, and stepped into something my family knew absolutely nothing about. No announcements, no celebrations, no speeches, just work. Long nights, high pressure, decisions that actually mattered. While Marcus was being prepared for success, I was being tested by it. And the closer graduation got, the more I realized something almost unsettling. I didn't need that night. Not for validation. Not for approval. Not even for closure. Because the outcome had already been decided. Just not in the way anyone expected. So when my father raised that glass, when he chose Marcus in front of everyone, when the room clapped like it was obvious, I didn't feel overlooked. I felt aligned, because that moment, it wasn't the beginning of anything. It was the final confirmation that I had made the right move staying silent. And when I reached into my bag that night, I wasn't reacting. I was revealing, because inside that envelope was proof. Not of potential, not of effort, but of something far more dangerous to the narrative they built around me. Something undeniable, something irreversible. And the second my father opened it, everything they thought they understood about me was about to collapse. Dad, before we finish, I think you should see this. The words didn't come out loud. They didn't need to. But in a room full of noise, laughter, and clinking glasses, silence spreads fast when it's unexpected. And I had just interrupted it. You could feel it. That subtle shift, like the music was still playing, but no one was really listening anymore. My father turned toward me slowly, glass still in his hand. There was a flicker of irritation in his expression, the kind that comes from being pulled off script. "Treasure," he said, forcing a tight smile. "We can talk later. It won't take long." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't step forward dramatically. I just held out the envelope. Simple, clean, final, and that's what made it unsettling. Because moments like this, people expect emotion. Tears, anger, something they can dismiss or control. But calm makes people pay attention. He hesitated for half a second, then took it. The room didn't fully quiet, but it dimmed. Conversations softened. Heads turned just slightly, curiosity threading its way through the crowd. Marcus frowned, watching closely now. My mother's posture stiffened. Something about this didn't fit their expectations. Good. My father slid a finger under the flap and pulled out the document inside. At first, his expression didn't change. Just scanning, processing. Then, it did. Not dramatically, not in a way most people would catch. But I saw it, because I'd spent years learning how to read him. His jaw tightened. His eyes paused, then went back to the top of the page. Reading it again, slower this time. "What is this?" he asked quietly. Not to me, to himself. But I answered anyway. "It's finalized," I said, "as of this morning." Now the room was paying attention. Fully, Marcus stepped closer. "Finalized what?" I shifted my gaze to him briefly, then back to my father. Because this wasn't for Marcus. This was for the person who had just decided publicly what I was worth. "It's an acquisition agreement," I said. A beat. No one reacted yet. Because they didn't understand. Not fully. My father lowered the paper slightly, eyes narrowing. "For what company?" And there it was. The question that mattered. I tilted my head just slightly. "The one I've been working with for the past year." Confusion flickered across multiple faces at once. Because, as far as they knew, I wasn't working with anyone. I was just studying, graduating, existing in the background. My mother finally spoke, her voice careful. "You never mentioned—" I know. That landed heavier than anything else I'd said. Because it wasn't defensive. It was factual. I never mentioned it. On purpose. My father looked back down at the document, flipping to the second page now. Numbers. Details. Terms. That's where it hits. Not in the title. Not in the explanation. But in the numbers, I watched it happen in real time. The exact second it clicked. His posture changed. Subtly, but unmistakably. Like something underneath him had just shifted. "This." He started, then stopped. Tried again. "This valuation is correct." Now people were openly staring. The whispers had started. Low, curious, uncertain. Marcus moved closer, trying to read over his shoulder. "What is it?" he pressed. My father didn't answer immediately. Because he couldn't? Not yet. Because saying it out loud would make it real. And once it was real, there was no putting it back where it belonged in his mind. Small, secondary, manageable. I took a single step forward. Not into the center of the room. Just enough to make sure my voice carried. "I helped develop a biomedical platform during my final year," I said. "We entered the accelerator last fall." A pause. Let it settle. Today, it was acquired. Now the room held its breath. Because the only thing left was the number. My father finally looked up at me. And for the first time that night, he didn't look certain. He looked unsure. "Treasure," he said slowly. "How much is this worth?" There it was. The question everything had been building toward. The moment that would redefine everything in that room, I met his gaze. Steady, unshaken, and answered, but not loud enough for everyone to hear. Not yet. Because some reveals aren't about the number itself. They're about the timing. And as the weight of that answer began to spread across his face, across my mother's expression, across Marcus's growing realization, the room leaned in, waiting, because whatever came next was about to change everything they thought they knew about me. How much is this worth? My father's voice was quieter now. Not the confident, commanding tone from earlier. Something tighter, measured, like he already knew the answer was going to cost him something. I didn't rush it, didn't fill the silence. Because for the first time that night, everyone was waiting on me. 18 million, I said. No build-up. No dramatic pause. Just the number. Clean, precise, final. At first, nothing happened. And that's the strange thing about moments like this. You expect noise, reactions, shock hitting instantly. But real shock, it delays. It has to process. My father didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there holding the paper like it had suddenly gained weight. 18, Marcus repeated under his breath, like saying it differently might change it. My mother's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Around us, the room shifted. Whispers quieter than before, but sharper. Focused. Did she say? 18 million? That can't be. It's signed. And that's when it became real. Not because I said it, but because everyone else started believing it. My father looked back down at the document again, scanning it like he was searching for an error, a misplaced decimal, a condition he could question. There wasn't one. It's already finalized? He asked. Yes. And your share? Equity payout and royalties, I said. Structured through the acquisition. Legal cleared everything this morning. Translation? It was done. No approvals needed. No family involvement. No permission required. Just reality. For the first time in my life, there was nothing he could influence. Nothing he could adjust, redirect, or take credit for. And that's when I saw it. Not pride. Not even shock. Displacement? Because the role he had assigned me no longer existed. You handled all of this yourself? My mother asked, her voice softer, now careful in a way it had never been before. I did. Another silence. But this one felt different. Heavier. Because now everyone in that room was replaying the night in their head. The toast. The words. The choice. He deserves it more. She'll manage. Burden. And now the math didn't add up the way they expected. I could see it in the guests' faces. That quiet recalculation, the shift. The same people who barely looked at me earlier were watching closely now like they had missed something important, like they had misjudged the room. Marcus stepped back slightly. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to create space between us. And in that space, something unfamiliar settled. Comparison. For the first time, he wasn't the obvious answer. My father finally lowered the paper. His expression had changed again, still controlled but fractured around the edges. You should have told us, he said. Not accusatory. Not warm either. Just late. I held his gaze. For what? That question landed harder than anything else I'd said. Because there wasn't a good answer. Not one that didn't expose everything that had already happened. My mother tried to step in. We could have supported you. I shook my head gently. You did. That stopped her. Confused. We did? Yes, I said calmly. You supported Marcus. A pause. And that gave me exactly what I needed. Clarity. Distance. Motivation. I didn't say those words out loud. I didn't have to. They were already hanging there. Fully understood. My father exhaled slowly, like he was trying to regain control of something that had already moved past him. This changes things, he said. And there it was. Not, we're proud of you. Not, we were wrong. Just, This changes things. I nodded once. It does. But not in the way he meant. Because for him, this was a shift in value. For me, it was a confirmation of independence. And those are not the same thing. The room began to move again, slowly. People approached, different now. Questions, interest, invitations. The same energy Marcus had been receiving earlier redirected. I answered politely, briefly, but I didn't stay long enough for it to turn into something else. Because I wasn't there for that. I never was. Marcus eventually walked up beside me, hands in his pockets, uncertain. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked quietly. I looked at him for a moment, not angry, not distant, just honest. Would it have changed anything? He didn't answer. Because he knew it wouldn't have. Not before tonight. Maybe not even now. My parents lingered nearby, like they wanted to say more but didn't know how to start. And that hesitation, that gap, it told me everything I needed to know. Some things don't break loudly. They shift. Permanently, I set my glass down on the nearest table, untouched. Then picked up my bag. No announcement. No dramatic exit. Just movement. My mother noticed first. "You're leaving?" "I have an early morning," I said. Not a lie. Not the full truth either. My father took a step forward. "Treasure." I paused. Waited. But whatever he was about to say didn't come out in time, so I nodded once. Polite, respectful, final, and turned toward the exit. The hallway outside was quieter, cooler, real. Each step felt lighter than the last, not because something had been gained, but because something had been released. Expectation, comparison, the need to be chosen. Gone. Outside, the city stretched out in front of me alive, indifferent, full of possibilities that had nothing to do with where I came from. A car pulled up to the curb. Not theirs. Never theirs. I got in, closed the door, and for a moment, just sat there, not overwhelmed, not emotional, just still. Because the truth is, that moment inside didn't change who I was. It revealed it. I was never the burden. I was just the one they didn't understand. And now, they didn't need to. The car pulled away from the curb, the building shrinking behind me, along with everything tied to it. And for the first time, there was no part of me waiting for someone else to decide what I was worth. No part of me hoping to be seen. Because I already was. Just not by them. And finally, that was enough.
So tell me, was this revenge or survival? And what would you have done?